please, for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:32. And the first item here, we have Greg Franceschi back from ECAT or ECAT. And Greg's going to talk about the proposed Southampton cable studio. Appreciate you coming back.
Good to be here. Much as I hate being on television. There you go.
You get used to it.
Thank you.
The last time you were here, Greg, Tim screened for us some nice video that I assume it was made by yourselves, obviously, at some point.
Mostly Tim.
Mostly Tim. Okay, and then obviously what I believe we're seeing here are some more examples of that as well as some titles.
Exactly.
Okay.
I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the kinds of programming. I don't know how many of you have lived in communities where there was an active, community television station that was where people were producing a lot of programs. I think that the general impression people have of community access television and certainly the mainstream media's representation of community television is that it's Wayne's World or, some outrageous talk show. But community television has evolved a lot in the last 10 years. It's changed from being hyper-local. People in small communities, a lot of times it will just be the taping of a selectmen's meeting. And as far as resources for the community, there might be a couple of camcorders and an editing system. In the cities, you've got $1 million budgets. People are producing tons of programming. Nonprofit organizations, community groups, and individuals are producing things a lot and distributing them in ways that didn't exist in the past. You probably have all heard of a local hero as far as community TV is concerned, Ed Targonsky and his program Polka Time. It's a show that he started producing in Chicopee 15 or 20 years ago. Ed passed away this past year, but I want to mention what he did because I don't think that many people understand what a change took place, even though his program was very, very, very low tech. He just used a single camcorder, didn't even use an external microphone. The audio wasn't great quality, but he created a program that a lot of people really enjoyed, and he got it distributed more widely than almost anyone I've ever seen in community access stations because he was part of a network of people that would go to polka dances in Chicopee and all over the valley. He would tape the dances, and when he edited them together, he would edit different dances together. So there would be people from 5 years ago who had passed away 2 years ago, mixed in with people that were dancing at a dance 2 weeks ago. And he would get people to just pass tapes around. Each dance he would go to tape, he would bring all the tapes to a dance and give them to 5, 10, 15, and it expanded to 25 or 30 different access stations in Western Mass. At that time, the only way to distribute programming was through tapes. People would either have to pay for the expense of mailing tapes or they would do something like what he did. But he was the first person that I ever heard of who did something like that and reached a really wide audience, even though he wasn't a television producer in the conventional sense. He reached a lot of people and gave a lot of people access to polka music and to the dances, and did a really wonderful thing. What's changed most significantly in the last 10 years, obviously, is the internet and the introduction of satellite dishes into the mix. We have a satellite dish, and we have contracts with satellite system programming providers, and we're using different internet resources quite a bit. There are several in particular that I should probably mention that are really important ones. The main ones being the Alliance for Community Media, which is a national organization that umbrella organization for community television stations, has a server that we can access programming from. There's an organization called pegmedia.org that also distributes programming. PEG stands for Public, Educational, and Government Access. In larger communities, there are usually 3 or 4 channels that are allocated. In smaller communities, it's often combined all into one. The primary thing, though, that in the short term I would see Southampton benefiting from is the expansion of the government access piece. Obviously, you can have, as many meetings as you want to have taped and aired on the channel that you have either live or pre-recorded, or you can distribute them through the internet and put them onto the town's website. But the other piece that is really important for people in the community is access to equipment and training and how to use it. Community media is not something that's familiar to most people if they haven't either participated in it directly or known someone that has. So it's a resource that we provide in East Hampton and we'd like to provide for Southampton. So mainly what I'm here to do is share this, just to give you an idea of some of the kinds of programs that we've been producing and bringing in from other places, and to see what your plans are and to see if we can be part of the mix.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, I have a few questions myself. Do other board members have any questions of Greg regarding the cable studio installation?
I'd suggest you go first.
Okay. You'd mentioned, more than one meeting on government channels. We have Channel 5, which is, and I'm not a technical person, but we obviously have Channel 5 that people look at via local television. Would there be other channels that would be available?
I haven't seen your contract, so I don't know what the final decision was made in terms of the additional channels. What we would do is, basically make better use of that channel. If you have more than one channel, then certainly you can use the other channels to air just the government programming and have one channel designated solely for public access programming. Mm-hmm. But I think since you're just starting out, it would make sense to, even if you have all 3 channels, to focus on the one. As far as how you would put programming on the air, the primary ways that that's done is through, you have a server that you digitize all your programming if you're using a tape-based system, but you put all your programming into a server and then air it from the server. What I would like to propose is that, if we become your provider, we link our server to your town so that we would be able to air the programming from the facility that we have in East Hampton. I spoke to the people at Charter, the technicians at Charter, to see if that was even a possibility, because it depends on the layout of the fiber. Mm-hmm. And they said that there is fiber in place that links the 2 communities already, and that it's a possibility. It's more or less an issue of changing wires at the head end in Chicopee, and that would be the way that it would happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Good enough. And then your role would include not only digitizing the signal, right, from tape to digital and then sending it back over on the fiber, but your role would also include then running the video initially?
Well, the main pieces would be, we would expand the government access piece so that other committees and the planning board, for instance, if the school committee, if it made sense to tape school committee meetings, then the school committee meetings, that would be, your call what meetings you wanted to have taped. The other pieces would be offering workshops to people in the community on how to use the equipment and to give people access to equipment to produce their own programs. Primarily, it's individuals and people who are, in community organizations. A lot of times, in the schools, you'll have people that are interested in taping school sports. So it would be, we'd offer a workshop to the booster club or to parents that were interested or students that were interested in helping with that. And then they would, the programs, generally, the interest is generated from the person that's producing the program. Our role would be in helping to facilitate that so that they would be able to make programs about whatever they wanted to and air them on your channel.
Okay.
But then in addition to that, we also have a mix of programming that we put together for East Hampton that we would air on the channel around the local programming that you had.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. All right. What we don't know within the town of Southampton is what sort of demand pull there is out there in our 6,000 odd residents. What sort of thing that they might like to see, actually, too. So that's one thing, obviously, supply push, but the other side is demand pull. You know, what do our viewers want to see? We don't, at this point, have an accurate sense of how many folks use Channel 5 and what would make it more attractive, you know, for them. So there is a value proposition here that we're looking for. Now, I think we would need to go out and do a survey of some sort to ask people what would they like to see at home, what would be beneficial. And obviously, you would expect to have differences in opinions on that, too, on what the demand is. But we don't really have a sense of the overall usage, you know, of our channel right now, which is bad for us, because, you know, in order to make changes and to make some investments, it's helpful to know how well it will fly, how it will sell. So that's where we are.
Have you talked amongst yourselves about, in terms of expanding the taping of meetings? One of the things that I talked with Diana about was the possibility of starting to tape. The meetings that she mentioned were the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, School Committee, and I think that was it. But that would be, you know, that might be a place to start. But, you know, the longer or the bigger picture is, you know, do you want to have a contract and, you know, basically have an access provider come to the town and help with this, or do you want to start from scratch yourselves and, you know, run it as a, you know, either a town department or to create a nonprofit within the town that would do that? There are many communities where access stations are shared between two to three, sometimes 4 or 5 towns. In the Berkshires, I mean, with smaller communities, the issue is that the resources aren't there to be able to, you know, do that much in a town that's got a subscriber base of, you know, 4,000 or 5,000, 5,000 or 6,000 people, when you're, you know, only getting between, you know, 1% and 5% of the gross revenues of the cable company. So they'll often share the resource in, you know, one centralized facility and divvy it up as best, you know, as best they can, so that everybody's, you know, happy with what they're getting.
Sure.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have some concerns, if I may. I've been trying to read it and keep up on it. It appears that Diana Schindler has made arrangements with you and your company. Am I correct?
Up to this point, the arrangements that we've made have been in terms of planning and proposing something to you once the contract with Charter was negotiated, but the contract got dragged out and dragged out and dragged out.
Yeah.
So what we have at this point is a temporary arrangement in which we're taping the meetings for the town and we're just starting to do some programming. The 2 arrangements are set up in different ways. One is just for the meetings, and that's paid for by the meeting. The other is hourly for programs that we're producing at the school and some of the stuff that you saw last time.
Have we talked in depth about this, or is this the infancy? Because I'm under the understanding, I could be incorrect, that Diana had made a verbal agreement with you to start doing this, and it was not authorized by the Board of Selectmen, et cetera, et cetera. Am I correct or incorrect on this?
My understanding was that she had gone to you and that there was an ongoing discussion about it, and that initially what I had suggested to her was that we begin to start putting together some programming so that you guys could have some examples of things that could happen, you know, so that if none of you had lived in a town where there was an access station, you could see how it would connect to different community groups and to the schools. Rather than spending $20,000, $25,000 on installing robotic cameras in this space and buying all new equipment, when there was only, I think, I don't know, maybe there was $20,000 in your budget at that point from the previous 10-year contract, because those were the prices that the video engineer that came in and did estimates was saying it cost more than that in East Hampton with the system that we just set up. So what I suggested to her was that we use some of the equipment that we have at ECAT that we weren't using, because we upgraded a lot of our equipment when we renewed our contract a couple of years ago here, and buy new cameras for the robotic system and new audio, but the switcher and some of the other pieces, monitors, we just provide from stuff that we had, so that we would have a little bit of money to be able to start producing some programming.
Okay, very good, thank you.
As far as what's going to happen in the future, you know, it's, like you said, obviously in its infancy, and this is the first real conversation we've had, right?
Sure. It seems to me, we certainly are, as Doug said, we're in our infancy with this project. You know, it certainly sounds appealing, but again, I think it would behoove us to take a look at what, you know, the folks might want, because they would be funding this ultimately. So, I think, sir.
I have a couple of questions. You said they're doing some taping at the school and some programming at the school. At our school now?
Not at the, we've taped things at the school.
Okay.
But there's, as of yet, there's no way to air any of it on your channel because the fiber still hasn't been moved over. That's happening this week.
Okay. So then those tapings will then go out similar to our meetings.
Yes.
Who's paying the hourly fee for that kind of work at the school? Is that coming from our
No,
budget?
that's what Diana, that's the money that I was just talking about that was coming out of your previous 10-year contract that had not been used.
Okay, but it's coming out of that general fund. The school isn't paying for it out of their budget.
Yes, it's coming out of the PEG fund.
PEG fund. And my next question would, if we didn't do a studio or didn't do public access from here, would our residents have a right there, or would you allow them to go to East Hampton to utilize the facilities there?
We already do. We've had people from Southampton come in.
So there's no exclusion for people from out of town or anything?
Excuse me?
There's no exclusion of people in East Hampton, there's no exclusion of people from outside of town?
No.
So if somebody here truly wants to produce a program, they simply have to go to you in East Hampton to do that?
Yes, but you have no way of seeing anything that they've produced.
We don't have a way of seeing it.
Set up right now. The programs that we've produced at this point, I didn't answer your question completely. To be clearer, once the fiber is in place in this space, there still has to be a way to air the programs. You don't have a server at this point or a playback system. So in East Hampton, we have a server that holds 400 hours of programming. We air all of our programs from that server. So you would need to get some kind of a playback system in place in Southampton, and
But right now, someone from Southampton could go to East Hampton, produce the program, and it would go out over the East Hampton system,
yes,
not visible in Southampton.
yes,
But we can remedy that by having a server and a playback machine here.
yes,
And they could use your production facilities, but play it back through our system.
yes.
And that's one level of service that we could accommodate.
Okay.
That would be an expensive thing to do, though, in terms of setting up getting a server is $10,000 to $15,000 upfront. So the reason why I think that it would make sense to have the two towns join, in sharing the resources, because there are many, many things. I mean, Tim and my coworker Kathy spend many, many, many hours just entering metadata for all the different programs that we get coming into the station to air. Right now, we're in this awkward place of Tim's got hours that are allocated to do specifically Southampton projects, and then he's got hours that are specifically to do East Hampton projects. But there's a lot of crossover in terms of what's happening with the preparation of things that are more generally for the station. That, I mean, if we were sharing the resource, it would be clearer, and it wouldn't be like he's got to do these hours exactly, only focusing on Southampton projects, because many of the projects would be shared. In the same way that the community calendar, right now, you have a community calendar that Reggie used to be taking care of, that Tim does now. And we have a community calendar, and many of the messages would be the same, and but people are entering them in two different computers in two different towns right now, and the same would be true if you had your own server. You'd have to have somebody that was entering all that data and
So if we
managing the
join
server.
you, we're going to utilize your server coming into, but you're not on charter, are you, in East Hampton?
Yes, we're
Oh,
on charter.
So it would all go out on the same cable company.
Yes.
So if we join you, we save on the server, we save on that kind of thing, and then it just comes out on our system. I now have a better understanding of what we're trying to.
The main thing is you wouldn't be reinventing the wheel. I mean, we've been set up for 20 years, 20 plus years. We've been a nonprofit just for the past few years, but we have a lot of programming already that we've put together in a large library. Maybe a good place to start. If you guys would like to come and see our facility maybe sometime in the next few weeks, you could see the facility and get a better sense of what we're talking about, and maybe meet with some of the board members for the station. And maybe we could proceed from there and talk about more of the details after you guys have had a chance to talk amongst yourselves about, what you're thinking.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
I think you're right. We need to judge the demand before we do anything, and the question then becomes, how do we judge the demand?
Well, that question, it's interesting because, most communities do what's called an ascertainment prior to the negotiation of the contract, which Diana, and I don't know if it was your Cable Advisory Board that did the ascertainment, or Diana, but there was an ascertainment done a few years ago. I don't know, do you have a copy of it in the files? Have you seen that?
We did it with SurveyMonkey, yep.
In which, some of those questions were asked, but as far as, what the next step would be, I think that it's important that that you're constantly in communication with people in the different organizations within the community and with individuals in the community that are wanting to use the resource. But you've spent many, many years negotiating a contract to get a certain return from the cable provider on the investment that you all have made in, their monopoly. The way that it used to be was the cable companies were played off of one another. The first community access television stations were created in New York City when there were many, many cable companies, and they were all vying for the monopoly, because once you laid the infrastructure, dug up the roads and all of that, nobody else is going to come into New York City and dig up the roads and lay cable after they built that infrastructure. So initially, when they were, vying for those contracts, the many different cable companies were trying to outdo one another, and community access television was one of the things that they were negotiating for. It was the primary negotiating piece, because a lot of the other things like programming content was non-negotiable. The cable companies wouldn't agree to that, and it wasn't allowed for in the legislation. But community access stations, community access facilities, whatever, were. So the cable company that made the best offer back to the city in terms of providing access to people in New York to use these resources was the one that got the contract. What's happened since then is obviously the cable companies have merged, and there are very few cable companies now, and they don't have to really negotiate so much for that. So, everybody, you're in a different position in the negotiation process than 10 years ago. But anyway, I feel like it's important to understand a little bit about the history of it and what the differences are between mainstream commercial television and community access television. Community access television is used by individuals and nonprofit organizations primarily, and because the reason why it came into existence was because those communities or sub-communities, whatever you want to call them, never had access to the media. You only had access to the media if, you were a news story, or, something sensationalistic that they wanted to document was, justifying in their minds covering your organization or your activities. With community access television, people can make programs pretty much about whatever they want to. And it's a way for, for small organizations and individuals to reach out to much, much larger audiences than was ever possible before. A lot of businesses are doing little, portraits in East Hampton. The Chamber of Commerce is airing a series of programs about local business people and about their businesses, just to give people a glimpse of what their businesses are and to let them know, what services are available through those businesses. So, it's something that serves the business community as well as the nonprofits, if they use it.
Okay, great. I'm also mindful of the time here too, Greg.
Yep.
We appreciate it. We're going to have to probably move on from this, but do you all on the board have any further questions? Or it sure makes sense to me to go over and visit your studio. We appreciate the invitation, and also to talk amongst ourselves to really get a clearer sense of what we might want to do.
How would, do you want to set a time and date now, or do you want to come to our next board meeting? We usually meet on the 4th Monday of the month.
Fourth Monday. That's coming up next Monday, which
The
is,
night before the special town meeting.
that's the 29th?
No. This was the fourth Monday yesterday.
That's right. I lost a week in there.
So I think it's the 27th of February. I didn't check before coming in.
Yeah, I think, so yeah, we could certainly set that up. Sure.
Is that a time that everyone,
I can be there, I'm not sure about the
Time
other
is your
ones.
meeting? What time are we talking about?
6 o'clock? But we meet usually from 6 to 8, so anytime in there would be fine.
Hard for me to get there by 6.
Want
I
to shoot
think I
for,
could try to do that. Yeah, I would really be interested in seeing the studio also.
would 7 work for everybody?
Would for me, February.
Okay.
Five Mondays this month, that's why I was, my head was, my thinking.
And we're in the White Brook Ski.
Yeah, okay. Great, thanks, yes,
I
sir.
have a question.
Oh, Greg, sure.
Are you associated at all with Charter?
I am not
You're not an
associated.
agency of Charter, you're a private entity?
No, we're a nonprofit organization. The funding the funding comes through charter in a
That's the fee we
contract,
all pay,
in a
right?
contract that is negotiated by the town.
That's the fee we paid,
Yeah.
which was a grant?
Well,
It was really a fee?
they call it a
I
grant.
just want to clarify that.
It's a surcharge on your bill.
And the second thing is, are you a sole source provider? Are you the only person who provides this service, or? No.
I
Then
don't
will we
believe
ever
that
go out
you,
to bid?
I don't believe that you have any other communities neighboring Southampton, but you'd have to look into that.
I don't know, I'm just asking a
That
question.
are, you know,
It's our
with charter.
understanding, sorry, Greg, it's our understanding, Ed, that there are other studios that do this for a fee, they come out and tape and do things like that? Correct.
Is there anything going on in Hampshire Regional with all their arts and sciences and communication?
Yeah, as part of our research, we're gonna look at who
Okay,
might
because
be.
my
doing this.
concern is, I'm a department head, and we've been level funded for many years.
Right.
And if we're gonna go out and start spending money and building other departments without addressing our needs of the current departments, which is not a one-year thing, it's been going on for several years, I have a concern with it.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Can I just respond to that? Because the funding for PEG is earmarked specifically for community access television. It wouldn't be affecting any of the town budgets. It's not part of that.
I understand what you're saying, but there was talk about hiring people and stuff like that. My concerns were that it wasn't going to affect our budget.
I said hire means we could engage with the studio, bad choice of word on my part.
Okay.
But well said, yeah, because department heads here have it rough. Okay, well, thanks very much, Greg, we certainly appreciate your time. And the next item we have then is Mr. Keelson, the town accountant, regarding the update in general ledger accounts, and there was an email from the finance committee with respect to a discrepancy number as well. David, are you ready to talk? Thanks, Greg. Dis- Not an oversight, but a discrepancy.
Hello.
Okay, so, David, in terms of where to begin with the various things,
I have brought some stuff to hand out, if you'd like. Enough for about 4 times as many as are sitting here now, but what can I do about that? Let me just give you an update on where I am on certain things. Free cash has not been certified yet. It's actually probably finished today or tomorrow morning, and then goes to Springfield, and I'll probably take it there tomorrow. There's no question that it will be certified well before the town meeting, so, and your article's only get up to about $100,000, and the free cash is going to be considerably more than that, so it'll be a non-issue. You'll be able to pass any free cash articles that you'd like to. And I can give you again an analysis of what my estimate is. It's a little different format than the previous one, but it's broken down into two parts. One is at least the estimated free cash is $327,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. But in addition to that, I think I mentioned this to you before, that there's a supplemental state aid amount that was received by Southampton that was about $39,000, and that cannot be added to the free cash like I did in the first presentation, but it can be used at a town meeting vote. So it's another pocket that brings it really up to like 360,000 or something like that in total. And all you have to do with that is to change the wording of your article a little bit, saying it's not free cash, it's thus and so, but it is accessible. So you might as well consider it to be the same.
That would need to be a floor motion because we don't have time to post it. We need 14 days
To do what?
to post changing the article.
Oh, well, I mean, you could use it for subsequent, I mean, you don't have to, it's got the same sense of free cash, so you could, if you have another town
We
meeting,
can sit there and next time we need $39,000, we can just spend that money. This time around, if we choose to, we'll spend free cash money.
right, you still are only using a third of your free cash, so at least in what my suspicion is, so, more than a suspicion. So I'll just hand you a batch that you can take a look at. Down. Maybe that's enough, maybe it's not. I'll leave some here for whoever wants them. Yeah, the Finance Committee deserves to take a look. For the most part, this does look like what the last one did, I think. So, except for that swap at the bottom that splits the two.
David, if I could just interrupt for a minute. Well, that number looks very appealing, the 327-odd thousand. Ed, do you have a closer number that you're looking at to fund the storm expenses?
We don't have to deal with that right now. We met with FEMA Friday afternoon up in UMass, and I have a kickoff meeting with FEMA tomorrow morning, or tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock, to go over cost and reimbursement and start submitting the forms for considerations. They're, like we talked before, our total cost, we had a print on it, and we still have about $80,000 of work to do. That's chipping the pile of brush that we have out there, which is 16,000 cubic feet. It's a very large pile. And also 3 or 4 weeks of hiring bucket trucks to get all these tanks out throughout town. We have a lot of them that are on public way. The wind is taking down some. There's a lot of them that we still have to go to get, which is a reimbursable fund, but I didn't spend that money yet. That's why there's still, if you saw that order, there's about $84,000 spent, and we probably spent probably 320, 25. You can't hold me to it, but I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that's kind of what we spent. We spent about 225 right now, and we have another 84 to go. I'm anticipating reimbursement of all our overtime, none of our regular time, most of our hired equipment, most of our material used, and all our trucks and that was used, our equipment that was used, the chainsaws all the way up to heavy, they'll be reimbursed at a federal rate. The preliminary cost on just our equipment alone was probably close to $90,000. I will get some agency that went this. They know that it's apparent and it's a necessary evil that they have to try to get us our money before June 30th, so we don't have to borrow for that. And that has been their benchmark right along, because you get us that money.
Okay.
Okay? The other side of it, the state is entertaining picking up some of the remaining 25% of the legitimate funds.
Thanks very much. I'm sorry for the interruption, Dave. We just needed to get some
But,
clarity.
Ed, could you estimate just big ballpark, how much the town's gonna have to pick up of all those figures that you know, best case scenario,
Depends on what
or the
they
worst case
accept.
scenario?
I would say,
They're all worse.
best case scenario, we'll probably think of about 50 to 75, that's our best case. Worst case scenario, probably 150,000.
Okay, so-
David, back to you. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Why don't I just give you the 6 months of the new year on the expenditure side, just so that you can look at it. I think you may have gotten copies to our office, a different version or the same version, but
And maybe some extra up here, too.
Wendy. I'm out of paper clips. Just again to show you the process, in that percentage column on the very right, like for instance, the second line down, selectmen expenses, is showing a 56% utilization, and so if you were to spend the exact same amount every month, for instance, you'd be slightly over budget. But this shows you, it gives you an idea of how you're doing, and you know that when you come to a point where you really are certain or anticipate that you simply can't make it in your budget, you should try to anticipate that as soon as possible, and then meet with the finance committee and talk about their special fund and the reserve fund, or try to change, in fact, how you're spending so that you could probably stay within the budget before the year ends. If you also just glance down in the balance column on any one of the pages, you will see an occasional minus number, which means that some are over already. And it's not, I have a little tape here that says that there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 accounts that are over, actually 5 accounts that seem to have a negative balance. They add up to less than $1,000. But then, as Ed has already explained, the one major one that's overspent, which everyone is aware of already, is the public works area, and that's on the second page, the bottom of the second page, and you can see that, for instance, the general highway expenses are overspent by $34,000, and again, this is not a surprise. I mean, Ed has clearly described what the situation is, but even on the positive ones, like for instance, the highway wages, for instance, has spent 83% of his budget. It's not overspent, but hopefully these are the areas that will be covered as best you can by the grants that come through, and then presumably by free cash. I guess.
Could I interrupt you with a question here, observation?
Anytime.
On the last page here,
Yes.
you know, miscellaneous expenses, there's some totals there. And I recognize that some of the departments have positive, some have negative balances at this point. However, if you divide 1,008,000 by 1,530,000, you come up with roughly 66% in global expenses to date for the
What page are you looking at?
the last page.
And 1 million what?
1 million divided by 1.5 million.
Where are those numbers?
On my total miscellaneous.
Oh, you're looking about,
I'm looking more globally. I'm not much in the weeds myself. So I was thinking, from the overall town budget perspective, we're about 66% spent. Should that be a cause for concern based on your experience in towns? And you get halfway through the year and you've got 66% of your budget spent. Is that within the
so
normal?
you're saying that you're comparing 6 million to 13 million?
No, I'm saying I divided in my head 1,008,000 by 1,530,000.
I don't see any 1,008,000.
Actual expenses divided by revised budget under the last line miscellaneous.
See this here,
Oh, 1 million,
Yeah.
gotcha.
1,008,000. Right. Yeah, so I just divided this by this. and
Okay,
came up
yeah,
with
right,
roughly
absolutely, you're right.
66%. So
That's
that
right.
cause for concern at the town level,
Yeah.
rather than individual departments. It's kind of looking at the whole season versus one day.
Yes, you gotta go down one more line. You're only looking, that's the number for miscellaneous.
That's
You gotta-
just miscellaneous.
You gotta go to total general,
Oh, okay.
the 13,000 to 13 million to 6 million.
Okay, even better, so that looks to be roughly half.
Yeah, so that looks
That's right.
better.
And that's the line to look at.
Okay,
That other was just that one category.
okay, that's a line. So, all right, so again, my process, though, again, just dividing
Yeah.
one by the other puts us at
Yeah,
about 50%.
that's the way to do it. Yep.
We're about where we should
And
be.
that's, there should also be a percentage there, but the software doesn't put a percentage there, so. Right. Or you'd be able to see it.
In my book, 6 million, 50%.
Right.
We're about 50% spent, and we're 6 months through the year, right?
It's not bad.
50/50. Thank you.
Any other questions on these? I mean, this is not absolutely precise because I'm still a little behind in making sure that we have all of the cash receipts. I'm pretty sure we do, and I can, yeah, I might as well, you know, yeah, I can give you the revenue accounts too. Why don't you look at those for a moment? Those are only 2 pages. And again, this is just the general fund. I mean, departments, of course, a lot of their activities and all the other funds as well, and I'm hoping that the departments are getting those full printouts at least once a month, maybe more often, but it's important that the accounting side stays current, and we have to bring all the factions together in order to do that. It'll be good, once the free cash is certified and we know what we're talking about, we can be confident, and I think that there's some entries that I haven't carried forward, some journal entries, like, what was an example, of, I think the CPA 10%ers weren't carried forward yet on their 3 main categories. You already voted for it, so it's an easy thing to do, but I just haven't done that yet. So the next visit, in fact, if you, I don't know, if you're interested, I mean, it might be nice to just meet for a few minutes before the special town meeting, if you wanted to do something like that, because then I'd give you an absolute correct number for the certified free cash, and give you probably even a little more accurate show on what's going on. So I'll be glad to do that too. So do you want to do something like that? The meeting it starts at what time?
7.
Do we have anybody coming in beforehand to present any programs?
Not that I'm aware of this.
5:30 to 6:30, we're presenting a program on the Larry Field.
We could do 6:30.
Yeah,
Yeah, so squeeze, if you want to, I'm
Maybe the
fine.
finance committee,
so they need to post that then?
would the finance committee want to meet too?
Okay, good. All right.
And I don't think I have anything other. You raised the issue about an email. I saw it just a short time ago.
It has to do with the recap, so we were hoping you could do a recap of the recap.
Well, I don't, I don't believe that there is anything wrong with what was done. I'm very confident of that, and, I mean, nobody comes to me to ask the question, they go every place else, so, so I wasn't there to answer it.
Is there anybody here who might be able to shed some light on this 200 and something odd thousand recap?
It's not, I mean, we spent a lot of time preparing that recap, and of course, it was certified by DOR. You wouldn't be able to send your tax bills out. So I guess all I would say would be that whoever, I can't remember who's raising this, but they should just call me.
Okay.
Can we, I guess there's two fundamental questions. Did we approve a budget of around 13.5 million?
Yes.
And did the DOR say we could raise revenue in the amount of 13.2 million?
Raise revenue?
That's what the letter seems to say. That seems to
I
be-
actually have a copy of the recap here.
Right, it's in our folder here, too.
It seems to say the max allowed by DOR to raise for revenue was around 13.1, and then the issue,
13.2.
or 13.2.
Well, the tax, we're under the tax limit.
That's the issue that's been raised to us.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, I know, I did look at it briefly, right. So when this is saying that,
That we have a $300,000 shortfall, if this is right.
We're allowed to raise 13.2 from taxes and other sources.
Right, but we pegged it at 13.5.
well, it's, the,
Budget, you voted.
right, I mean, we voted out a budget, and it was under the tax limit, and so I don't understand.
Well, I guess that's the question raised by this memo. Were we under the tax limit, or did we go over the tax limit?
At 13.5.
At 13.5.
Well, that's not the
Well,
tax.
yeah, that's part of it.
Right.
That's taxes plus other revenue.
There's a, you know, there's
Not just
a,
that, but the total revenue,
there's a levy limit, right, that's the total, right.
total revenue.
Right, we're definitely under the levy limit.
But our ability to raise revenue is at 2.5, no more than 2.5.
Including new growth.
So the total revenue is what they're looking at, and they're saying that our budget was more than the amount we should have been allowed to raise by that 300,000.
It's a small amount, so it's not a big deal, really. When you get to be $1 million, then you got a problem.
But that would be all our free cash. It would be gone and we'd be in the hole. So,
Well, I will have a precise answer for you.
could we have a precise answer for special town meeting?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, that's the question, because we certainly will handle the free cash differently if this is right or wrong. I just don't know.
We would actually go into fiscal year 13, if they would come back and grab it.
Yeah, but we better start saving it up now, because we're not going to come into another 300,000.
Nope. Not likely. Okay, so we can calculate the levy limit or recalculate it?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's
All right. Okay, well, thank you very much, David. Anything else that you had for us?
No, I think-
All right, thanks. We'll move on then to the next item, which is Charlie Kanicki, and then we'll go to Ed Colley after that. Charlie, welcome back. I was here in 1954 in this room, 55, around there. Isn't it weird? Same year. Same
They
room.
started, would you say, would you mind?
Your point of reference was lower.
You got it.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, David. Thank you. Okay, sir, we have for you then an update on the public safety complex.
Yeah, we're almost operating at 6 months right now, about 5.5
Right,
months. I felt
absolutely.
it was time to sort of step in, say hi, give sort of a quick overview of where we are. Things are moving along, you know, not fast, but they're moving. We have taken and developed a master map of all town properties to see if there's any areas that might be suitable. We've had discussions off the record, you might say, with the fire chief and police chief about needs. We've sent out letters to surrounding towns that have built public safety complexes to set up meetings to take and do some inspections of those facilities, trying to get communities that are comparable in size to Southampton. And that's moving forward too. It's a slow process, but it is moving. One of the things that I've been noticing is the difficulty of getting quorums, and I'd like the select board to basically do a review. Maybe we should throw a couple more people onto this committee, especially if this committee starts to really start moving forward, because you're going to need the hands on there to do all this.
How many do you have in your?
Right now, there's 6, and I understand Mr. Phelan is now.
Oh, I am? Did I do that?
That was one of 6 committees they put you on.
Oh, okay. What happens when I don't show up for a night?
You're on vacation.
I was going to say, must have been the night I wasn't here.
I have to be chair because I was at a flood.
Well, Charlie, I appreciate it. Let me know when the meeting is then. I'll put my name down now.
Okay, so we would need to just change the charter of that committee then.
Yeah, I think it would be healthy to have a couple more people on.
First Tuesday.
First Tuesday?
First Wednesday.
Yeah.
And that's right, too, because it conflicts with person.
Okay, all right.
Any questions from the board?
I was just curious, obviously land is the thing. You're looking at different land possibilities and different buildings. The other thing that comes up a lot, though, is I've heard that there was a time that there was some federal grant funding available for these complexes. that
Well,
East-
let's go to land first.
Yeah, 2 things.
The mapping of the town land doesn't show us many large parcels. And when you put in the police and fire station together, you end up with a large parcel. The only one that looks like there might be a potential is this property here behind the fire station. But until somebody draws boundary lines as to where the actual boundaries are and somebody does some soil work to see what's actually out there, that's just the potential.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do now is go to these other facilities, get a view, and then we're going to try to put together a crude overlay of what a building would look like. By doing that, it'll give us areas as to how much area we need for driveway and stuff like that. And then we can use that to extrapolate how much land we need.
Sure.
It's become quite apparent that we want to branch off of Route 10. And we want to try to stay as close to the new town hall as possible. Those seem to be where the committee's going with it. But step 1, view the other sites, try to get an idea. Step 2, put a rough map together as to what a building would look like and driveways and stuff. And then that'll take and give us an idea of where we should be looking for land, because we'll have an idea of just how big this needs to be.
Sure.
And obviously, this isn't today's size. This is going to be something that's geared to probably the next 50 years in town. So the growth of the town, I don't think that's going to be myself. Now, as to the grants, a lot of the grants you saw were through Homeland Security. Homeland Security has been cutting that money back steadily. I'm not aware of any federal grants now for public safety complexes.
Okay.
But the flip side of that is, we're not ready to apply for a grant. It could be 2 years from now, there'll be a whole reversal in government and things will change again.
True. True. Okay.
Can we Charlie brings up a valid point about quorums, and we established that committee, so why can't we remedy that, hit Charlie's problem with quorums tonight, and add a number of people to that? So normally there's 7 on there. What are you thinking, Charlie, 9?
I was thinking that, what I was hoping was the select board would just open it up for people that want to submit their names.
Well, I think we have to have an indefinite number so that a quorum is established. But I would move that we add 2 additional places to the Public Safety Complex Committee and accept applications for those 2 slots.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really what we
Second.
need. Okay, we have a motion made and seconded to change the number of members of the committee, the Highway Safety Complex, or Safety Complex, excuse me, to 9 from 7. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Done.
Just for clarification, Mr. Kinnicky, your meetings are the first Wednesday of the month at 5:30, am I correct?
Yes, and the third Wednesday of the month.
First and third.
And third?
This wasn't your recommendation, I believe.
Yeah, I want to bring that out to everybody.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay,
First and third.
all right, great. We certainly appreciate the update, and
Mike, that was good of you to volunteer. You are.
I'm not going on vacation again.
I mean, that's the real underlying issue, but things are moving, and I must be candid, I'm very delighted with the people on that committee. It's moving.
good, all right, that's great. Thank you, thanks.
Thank you, Charlie.
Okay, moving right along, we now have Mr. Ed Cawley, who's asked to come up during open time for the public to talk about the park grant with respect to Labrie Field,
You could never miss a meeting.
alternative funding.
Shouldn't miss any meetings. You understand? No, select board.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the liberty of putting this chair on top of this table, if I may.
Fine furniture?
Scratching it, well, it's,
Fine furniture.
You want to put this chart up here? Just to give you an update on the Larrabee Field. You should have a letter in your packet, I believe, that we were denied. We were denied because there wasn't a lot of money, and second of all, there was a lot of applicants. But when I talked to the director, the major reasons why we failed in our grant is our demographics. When I say demographics, our average income means is much higher, and it works against us. The amount of money that the average household brings in, on the average, is much higher than most towns that received, if not all towns that received grants already. The other thing that affected us, we're not a green community, so we lost points on that. And another thing that we lost points on, these are three of several of them, there were the three major areas, that we do not have a regional transportation system in Southampton. There's a bus company that picks up and moves. But the demand, the dynamic of Southampton doesn't lead to it in an effective way. But those are some of the things that affected us on how the grant was awarded. We did not, we received a 41 out of a 61 to fund. Okay, we had 41 points out of a 61 to fund. They funded 14 grants and they funded 6, I think, in Western Mass. Okay. With that being said, the committee, we worked scenarios that if we didn't get the grant, what we do, and how we would approach it so we could move forward. I'll give one to Doug. Give one to Doug.
Thank you.
And our suggestion is that we move forward with the first 4 phases. At town meeting, we're going to be asked for roughly $741,482. With that money, we're hoping to do phase 1, which is the parking area, okay, and site work in this area. Phase 2 would be a premier baseball field. 3 would be a soccer field. And 4 would be all the outlining practice fields in this area here. 5 is a pavilion that would be put here, which we're not funding at this particular time. And 6, we're not funding at this particular time, which is a tot area. When we go to construction and we build this, if everything comes out of town meeting in a positive manner, we'll be resting these fields for a year after we see them, so they can get established, they can thicken up, and they can tolerate a lot of traffic and activities. That is a standard rule of thumb in the field when you build ball fields. You let it rest for a year, establish it, and you want to thicken it up so it can tolerate the athletic activities that will be on it. So if we finish it this summer, probably the following summer, we'll be open. But that gives us some time to figure out a way of funding these two items here, or the remaining amount of money to finish the complex. So, as you see, the town meeting will be asking from community preservation for $741,482, and it'll take care of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. That'll also take care of replication areas of these two areas that are going to be eliminated as wetlands, and we have to reestablish new wetlands in this area here on a 2-to-1 basis. So for every foot that we remove, we got to replace 2 feet, and that's what we're going to do in this area here. We reduced some of the cost on this project too, because one of the other costs that we were hoping to get, if we get the $500,000, is to put a water main in here to service this area here. The water commissioners are entertaining picking that funding up and bringing it over to a stub that was established when we built Whispering Meadows. The reason why we're considering it is because this will strengthen the flow of water through this project, but also improve and enhance the fire protection and flow on the East Street side. So it's a big benefit, not just for the park to have that water main through there, but also that quarter of the town. It will increase fire protection, give us higher flows, but also maintain higher flows and flows in 2 different directions. Okay, so we are entertaining that. I don't think we're going to have a problem with that. The needs there. So we are reducing some of the costs that were in here. We're going to pick them up somewhere. On phase 1, just to let you know, in order for this to work, there's roughly $82,000 or $83,000 left after 2, 3, and 4 are completed. And I believe the highway department can come in and establish this driveway and this parking lot with that funds. So I just want to let you know that the highway department would probably, with your blessing, build this section, which is very similar to what we did out here and over off that park over off Helen Drive, and many other projects we've done throughout the past years. So this is very much in our construction skills, and we'd be more than happy to do that at a savings. So just want to inform you where we are and how it's going, and the meeting is Tuesday. We're going to have a hearing beforehand, and we had to change it around, but we were prepared to change it around because of the change in funding. We will go after the grant again, and we'll look at other ways to raise revenue to finish those last 2 phases. And with that done, is there any questions from the board? Anything good?
I have one, Ed.
Yeah.
You had a contingency on the total project of 125, but we don't have any contingency in the first 4 phases.
No, but we're hoping because of the atmosphere of the bidding is very advantageous right now, that what we estimated, we anticipate, or we're hoping that we get better bids, and then we can take that money and put it into contingencies. So any savings will go into contingencies. Okay.
Because the normal would be about...
Contingency is high. Usually when you do a project this big, you carry a high contingency, like they do at the school. You start off 10 or 11%, then you reduce it down to 5 to make sure you have something after the bids are in.
Because this is a
bid this project, we're going to have a requirement that they have a background in this type of construction, from field construction or something related to it. So we're not getting somebody with a tractor and a bulldozer who just happens to have one and does the job. There will be some scrutiny, and there will be some prerequisitions required under the law and how to do this. Okay.
Pre-qualified.
Pre-qualified. Any other questions?
Are we going to hard pave that parking lot? Or?
No, we're only hard paving this front section, just to come off the road. The rest is, it was suggestions of that from conservation, from planning board, that we do a hard packed gravel driveway to assist the infiltration of the water.
Yeah. I'm familiar with a project in Connecticut where they put those mats down and then they filled the mats with stone, and especially for seasonal.
We're not using mats, we're stripping down to the subsoil, and then we're going to probably bring 12 to 14 inches of gravel, and then pack with some dense graded material on top that will tighten up, but also to let water infiltrate.
Right, especially for seasonal parking. No sense parking.
When we first started talking about this, do I recall this correctly, that we were also talking about like a walking area?
Yes,
and
there
kind
are
of
walking
nature?
areas here. There's a path that's being established all the way through here, to the parking lot. This is where we're probably using a lot of our wood chips from our storm damage, because it has always called for a wood chip path through here. We're also encouraging later on, if we get some additional funds, some areas over here, because there are a lot of visual activities here for various people who want bird watching or
Right.
walking in that area. We're going to encourage that.
Ed, look
Yeah.
at that over. Look at that.
Oh.
You got the colors on it.
Yeah, I do have a question. It shows you what the projects will be, ball fields. Okay.
So Ed, you don't have a septic at this point, I'm assuming you have porta potties and all that?
Depending on how it is, we'll pick up the proper licenses. We have people who have licenses that have done this in the past, and we'll probably do this when we do the parking lot, because that's where the system will be. But it's all, predicated on funding. You know.
Mhm.
We'll probably put the septic system in rather than dig it up again and put it in. We'll probably
okay.
put it in ahead of time.
All right, good.
Mike, do you have a question? No.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I was interested in the landscaping and the theme that you
Jack,
have.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
I was just saying, I was interested in the landscaping. And, yeah, I mean, are you...
We have a special landscaping plan with trees. Well, if you come up here, you can see all the trees that are going to be planted through here. They're enclosed in here. They're mostly around the parking lot in this area here. The ball fields don't have very many trees around because you really don't want obstacles where people are running backwards or forwards or whatever, sideways, and warming up. So there is a lot of decorative planting throughout this area here to enhance the attractiveness of the entry to the park.
Are we going to be able to see the different themes or what kind of plants they're going to use before they... I mean, you have three different...
It's not plants per se or shrubbery. These are going to be trees.
trees, yeah, right.
Yeah, they're specified in the plans.
Okay.
You have to come to my office or come Monday
I would
night.
love to see.
Okay, the plans are there, yes. Okay. And there's an ice skating ring here, which we're going to use a detention basin. So any flows that are coming out the project will be collected here, and we'll use this for ice skating.
Oh, recreate that pond, yeah.
Yep.
Right. Great. Looks good. Looks good.
All righty?
Mhm.
Anybody have questions on here? You don't know anybody? You got a lot of people.
Thank you very much, Ed.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Great job. Thank you.
Great job. Okay, we are still in open time for the public. Is anyone else here in the public who has something they would like to bring up?
No, I can't.
Before we move into approval of minutes and things like that?
You have minutes?
We have some other things. What we can do is hold the signatures and come back to those and get the... Keith is here. Are you here for some...
Just for public interest.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I was thinking while Ed is here, though, we do have a couple of things we might like to clear up.
Go ahead.
Sure. One is this, the janitorial proposed position and funding. So there's a personnel request form that I saw that we needed to get clear on how many hours were actually anticipated.
I agree with you. We need to get clear on it. The only reason I'm pushing it is that I've been paying the cost since December 25th out of my budget. We need to figure out how you're going to shift some money to pay for those costs, is one. And second of all, are we going to establish that position? And has anybody talked to finance committee about it?
I thought that we had moved it pretty well along. There's another element here, too. There was apparently a mistake in the budget allocation from last year, too, so we have that separate item to deal with. But we also have that we had established that we were going to post this, I thought, as a 40-hour position.
Correct.
And Ed was going to report to Ed.
Correct.
And the funding, I'm assuming, came out of, I don't know.
I don't know. It's actually in the Finance Committee's hands.
Right.
Well, went through policy procedures, we approved it before, but it came back because there was no money source.
That would make sense.
The reason that there's no money source is that there was, originally I think there was $15,000 or $18,000 in there, and and then this particular year was only 7,500.
Correct, yes.
With
I
the
think
understanding
8,000.
that the other money was put into expenses because you might do contract services. Is that money still in expenses?
Yes.
Okay, because you can't move that money out of expenses to wages until the end of the year.
Right.
You know,
That
so
lit-
money's locked up there. But
Still,
to get a handle on it for next year, I think you need to, it's in the budget that I put in under highway department, carrying the custodian / highway worker. It's in the budget that I submitted to them today.
Yesterday.
Okay, so I went into them yesterday. So that part is there. I think this board, when you meet with them, you have to discuss with them that this is something that you want to have done. It was a position, and we're trying to combine a position, and at least
Right.
from what my conversations with a few people were, also to improve some hours extra in the highway department.
Some of that money, not that it's a great deal, but some should come from, if we combine that with the library, the
There
librarian.
was a discussion with the library that you guys thought it was like 15 hours or 10 hours a week.
Yeah.
I talked to Mr. Kluger, and it's only like, what,
4 hours a week, twice a week, 2 hours.
And somewhere along the line, we got misled about how many hours it was.
So, I mean, I'm happy to push that forward if that's the desire of the board, but I will need your support when it comes to getting that position.
But where are the expense, because we were supposed to have this money in expenses, because we all knew that, we have a category, town hall building expenses, Larrabee building expenses.
Right.
And there's not as much money in either one of those as I would have thought there would have been.
I agree with you. I think there was almost $7,000 or $8,000 that should have been put in there. We only funded half the year. We anticipated the second half of the year was going to be contract services.
It's in the town hall custodial expense line, is where Diane had put that money.
Which page is that?
It's on the first page, at the bottom.
That only had about $1,000 in years past, right?
Yes.
Didn't have much money.
Correct, right. It started off at 7,500.
So it's, so
That was
there's,
his portion, Joe's
Right.
portion of the pay.
so that was 60, so there's still $6,900 in that account,
But,
which ain't gonna
you
get
can't
you.
touch it.
No, until the end of the year,
When you do the balancing act, and how they show until,
last few weeks.
So, I mean, you're gonna anticipate, I'll continue doing it, the board desires, and taking it out of my funds, but I will have a shortfall, okay? I will have a shortfall.
Well, then we'd have to go to Finance Committee for reserve transfer plus this account to cover you till the end of the year.
No, I mean, is there a transfer going in already, Reggie?
I didn't put it in. I did notify the finance committee, but I did not put it in.
Well, and my suggestion is ask for $4,000 or $5,000 as a stopgap measure, and, you know, keep it under that wage. I'm putting the wage of custodian. I'll just, as part of the board, I'll put the hours the guys work against those hours and pay it out.
I think we should make a motion that we request a transfer from the Finance Committee of a reserve account in the amount of $5,000,
$4,000 or $5,000.
$5,000 to the custodial wage account because it's unfunded for the second half of the year.
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded then to request 5,000 was your final number?
I said 5.
5,000 into the custodial wage account to fund those actions, those tasks. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye. Is that going to be enough?
And, I talked to the principal and also the janitors. They're very happy to come over here, and we'll pay them out their time out of the expense.
Yes.
That's a legal expense.
Mhm.
So you're handling the day-to-day dispatch of the various people then, I'm
Yes.
assuming? Okay, good.
And if she runs into trouble, she calls and says what she wants.
Mhm.
Okay, good. Sounds great. Okay, then the other item we have then is the 42 hours.
Right, with Joe Muse.
Mhm.
That's correct.
So my understanding, what we have here is there were 42 hours that were submitted. that
47 was submitted,
5 were
5 holiday, 42,
work.
right.
And of those, the 5 holiday hours were paid and the 42 work hours were not paid.
Correct. Correct. To my knowledge, correct.
Can I ask a question? and clear it up. What is his schedule? Did he work 4 hours, 5 days a week? Right. So the hours he's put in, you're talking about, it's a sheet that I saw and Mike saw, it's an hour and a half every Friday, above and beyond? For what?
Mopping the floors. He
Why
came
isn't
in
it
and mopped the,
every 4 hours? There's nobody here on Friday, why does he need an extra hour and a half?
because nobody was here, that's why he mopped the floors.
Why did he put those in?
He didn't mop the floors when people were here.
No, but why didn't he put him in on his regular time sheet?
I don't know.
Well,
I don't
then
know.
that's, how do we know what he's doing? Who authorized the extra hours?
I didn't know.
He's got a 20-hour individual, he never got authorization from coming in and doing this extra work. Now, because he didn't get some hours that he wanted on vacation, he wants to change it and submit 42 hours of work he said he did on extra days. And I didn't hear he was mopping the floors. I believe I heard he was filling the boiler.
No. From July to now, he was mopping the floors, and I know that because I was here. But prior 2 years, he was filling the boilers. He did not put that time in. He did put in extra time, but he did not submit
Well, I just want to clarify
all
the
those
boiler.
hours.
This building was under construction for 2 years, no boilers were being filled. The 2 years prior to that, we emptied all the water out of the boilers so we wouldn't heat the building.
Right.
So we go back 4 years, we're not filling this building with water.
I
We're
don't
just
know.
talking from July.
I don't know about
What's
that.
that?
We're just talking from July forward.
Correct.
July forward, he's asking for hours that, first of all, is not in the budget. Second of all, they were submitted all at once on one payroll. They were never submitted on a timely basis and approved by anybody to have extra work. I mean, we have budgets, don't we? We stay within budgets?
First, if I may say, the budget was never calculated correctly when Diana did the budget. And we just talked about it right now.
Well, he was
You know,
hired for 20
I'm
hours, now he's working 21 and a half hours?
no, I understand that, Ed, but when she did the budget, she knew his retirement was coming. She cut that anyway, so it was short anyway, if you think about
But
it.
did he get paid for 20 hours a week as it was?
Correct, yes.
So this is an extra hour and a half that he's looking to add on to every week since July.
Correct.
I'm sorry, we voted on it, Mike. You said no.
And I agree with you. I have to agree that the appearance that if you let someone 6 months after the time period has gone by to submit a request for another hour and a half on a continuing basis just doesn't look right. I mean, you're supposed to submit a time card. We're the ones pushing to have time cards submitted and signed.
Okay.
And it just, I'm a good,
The other thing too, Mike, he was hired for 20 hours.
right. I mean, he was hired for 20 and now suddenly it's 21 and a
Nobody
half.
had to authorize him to go over every week, an hour and a half.
Nobody authorized it. He was one of those folks that came in
And
on
that's-
his own time, and he's done it for many years since he's been here. He's came into the old town hall, this hall, filled the water boiler so it didn't leak over. He took care of the building on his own time.
Right. And
That
that,
doesn't make sense.
I know.
That's not what we're debating.
No, I know. I'm just saying, nobody authorized it.
What I'm saying, you have a procedure. The procedure is this.
Okay.
You have to get authorization to go over your 20 hours.
Correct.
There was no authorization given by anybody.
Correct.
Nor did he tell anybody he was going over that upfront. If people knew, they have every right as a manager, meaning you or a selectman, to say, you start on time, you finish on time.
But it seems to me that we did know. Certainly
I knew,
Reggie knew.
but I never reported it to
Wait
you.
a minute, He's supposed to work 4 hours, he works 4 5-hour days. That's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. He came in Friday and worked an extra hour and a half every day?
No,
Every
he
Friday?
didn't work on, no, he's Monday through Thursday.
Monday through Thursday.
5 hours?
4. He's supposed to be 4 hours, 5 hours, 4 days a week.
Right.
Monday through Thursday. He's not supposed to work on Friday. Now he's submitting a time request for every Friday for 6 months. I like Joe. I feel terrible about this, and he did take great care of the buildings, and he deserves a medal pinned to his chest. But we can't have your guys coming in 6 months later and adding an hour to every one of their weeks. It just can't be done.
No, it's not that, it's just not, we don't accept that. You can't have to work willy-nilly.
No.
Whatever you want, expect to be paid.
Right.
And we're a government. If Joe Blow can do it, everybody can do it.
Everybody.
We don't accept it.
Okay,
That's
so,
the policy, and my department, any other department head, I'm sure, if you know somebody comes in early and starts 15 minutes every day, you have to stop that.
Correct.
Okay, could I just interrupt with something? Next step would be to send a letter, a formal letter from the select board saying it's been reviewed.
Yep.
Does that work? Because we are technically in charge of him as an employee. 'Cause I'm the department head, I was told. I didn't know that.
And you extra week.
You get an extra week's vacation.
I do?
Yeah, take it.
Take it now, get out of here, right?
So-
Okay,
so-
so would
I
someone
have a
like to make a
question for
motion
Rich.
about that?
No, not yet.
All right.
So he was working 21 and a half hours every week,
Correct.
and he worked that hour and a half when there was nobody here to mop, because he couldn't work during the rest of the week.
Right.
So if we wanted these floors mopped properly, he had to work on a Friday.
Well, here's my
I mean,
question.
and I think that's good.
When
And
I
I
hired
don't,
him, and I did hire him, he was supposed to work 4 5-hour days. I don't know where it changed, but he was hired for 4 5-hour days, 20 hours a week.
And if I might, that's simply the next step in a process here is for us to draw the bright line in the sand, and then he will make his next move. So I can spell it out, but
but I also feel like he's been a good employee, and he's retiring, and I don't think it necessarily sets a precedent. I don't think you have to kind of worry about that.
yes, you do. In town government,
Yeah,
precedents get set every minute.
And I agree with you, he was an excellent employee, so on and so forth, but it was mandated to him 4 5-hour days, nothing on a Friday, and he did it on his own. We can't compensate him for it. I'd love to, we all would, we all love Joe, but we can't because it's gonna set a bad precedent. Then everybody in here could do that, and where would we be? Why would we have budgets? Why would we have anything?
Who else is going to mop the floor when nobody's here?
Well, I have a question. Did anybody tell him not to do that? He wasn't gonna get paid? He was allowed to do it, he came in here every Friday and
He
he
had a
did
key.
it, nobody stopped him, so what does it
have-
say about us allowing him? Well, I mean, nobody stopped him for 6 months.
Yeah, but, no, but frankly, he didn't have any expectation to get paid because he never submitted it on a timesheet for 6 months.
But I'm sure he wasn't doing it for nothing.
Unfortunately, Joe probably was, but he's that kind of guy. But if he wanted to get paid for that hour and a half, it should have been on a timesheet every week.
And if I may say for the record, he's actually done it longer.
Right.
Since we moved here,
Right.
he's done it since day one from the get-go.
Isn't that worth something? I mean, to
be
compensate.
compromised,
Is it a
maybe?
goodwill to the citizens?
But when you consider
For the
what you're
town?
compromising against is the town's policy of having budgeted employees, and we can't veer from that budget and still have a reliable, valid town budget. So, again, this is the next step in the process, which is hard to do, but it's the only step we have. That makes, yes, sir.
There was he also submitted 2 hours, 2 days for mopping the floors after the Christmas party and then a council on aging, which they were put in vacation. He submitted them after the fact. We approved them because we knew he worked there because people were there. We approved those 6 hours in addition to the 5 hours for holiday. These were never submitted before. They only came out because of the issue with the vacation time cure. As soon as that was brought to a head and determined that it was not eligible, these hours came back.
It's a tough one, really.
Sorry, but that's what happened.
I know, it's terrible, but otherwise we might have rules and budgets at all. If we just change them at our will, ad hoc changing. Sir?
Just curious, what's the exact figure or the rough figure, the delta in dollars?
$500 and something?
He's only $15.60 an hour, I'm not sure.
So 40 times 15.
600.
$600. Maybe you could figure out a way to give him a bonus for retiring.
That would set a precedent such as you've never heard.
You can't just spend public money like that.
I guess it's the public money, I guess that's the part.
Yeah, that's the thing. We could take up a collection amongst the people here and the townspeople, you can do that. We really could.
But it sounds like we got a lot of free work from him.
Right, we can't just take
I
from
mean,
a
it sounds like-
citizen for nothing.
How much do you
either.
get for your work?
Well, on the salary, it's different.
No, this work here.
I get a lot.
A good feeling, a warm feeling in your heart.
Now, I don't know, it's up to the vote, of course, but we really do have a pretty, from my perspective at least, we clearly need to adhere to that what we have established as the budget and personnel request forms and the job.
And is everybody really clear that that was the,
And if I just,
Line.
I'm sorry. If I may, I said it in an email regarding Angela Mumblow, who worked for the building inspector office. She did the same exact thing, and she was paid. She did the same exact thing after the fact and was paid.
Well,
So,
we should investigate that too, because that was never brought to us.
I don't know it. I don't
Well, I'm
know.
sorry, but.
Yeah.
And if we made a mistake once, we're not gonna make it twice.
Right. Well, you weren't aware.
Well,
It
I'm just
sounds like
saying,
you
if
weren't
if
aware.
somehow it got biased, or we were not aware of what was going on and we made the
Are
mistake,
you signing the payroll, Jess? Who signs the payroll?
We all, yeah, we sign the payroll here.
Well, I mean,
For-
whoever signs payroll's gotta know what these hours are for and what their budget is.
True.
You can't authorize overtime if it's not in the budget. You went through that last year.
Right.
I'm gonna draw this to a head and I'll do it. Move that we decline to pay the 42 hours.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Motion's been made and seconded.
Regrets, by the way.
To decline with regrets to take place in the form of a letter from the Select Board to Mr. Muse. Regrettably, we cannot honor his request to be paid for 42 hours. Any further discussion? Those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstain.
abstain?
2 abstentions, 3 in favor. The motion passes by majority.
In that same light, while Ed is here, just so I'm clear, we took a vote at the Personnel Policy Committee that from now on, when there's a separation of an employee, retired or otherwise, that they are to come to the Personnel Policy Board Committee for an exit interview to clarify benefits that are due or not, and do or not do.
And I believe, under the bylaws, the Policy Procedures Board is the ruling factor on that. And the department head can go with the employee.
But to avoid this confusion again in the past, we discussed the procedure and it was decided that we would conduct an exit interview with the employee for termination purposes. And so that we can say what benefits are due and payable and which ones aren't.
And when if he contests it, we can get to deal with it.
Right, we can deal with it right there rather than letting this back and forth go on.
Okay, then moving on to the next item, do we still have the vacation issue as well? Similarly, Mr. Muse has applied for vacation pay as a result of being here in calendar year 2012, technically, which would therefore entitle him to vacation pay for fiscal year 2013, is my understanding, in a proportional amount, which would be 50%.
Where does that say in the bylaw that he gets it?
It's
No, it's not.
not, yeah, no, I'm just saying that's the issue in
It
front of
has
us.
to be continuous service,
It does.
and that means a year. And he's not entitled to those benefits because there's no money for those benefits for 2,000 a year, passed in any budget. That's next year's budget.
He's looking for 2013, money that would be in July 1 of 2013.
I agree.
So,
If you worked at July 2 of 2000, fiscal year 2013, you would be entitled to those vacations.
Right.
That's why an exit interview is important to talk to these people to tell them what they can have and not have.
Right, well, the concept relates to accrual of vacation. And my recollection in, at least in corporations and other organizations, that the accrual occurs in that year, in the same fiscal and calendar year in which the work is performed. The vacation belongs to that year. I'm never aware of anything accruing in advance.
No. And
But-
Reggie had given me things that you pulled off the net, not necessarily from municipal government, but it says that they cannot get future year's benefits.
Future fiscal year, right. So,
the relevant bylaw, I believe, is 11.2, full-time employees. Employees shall be credited with vacation at the commencement of each fiscal year, July 1st, provided that an employee is employed prior to July 1st in accordance with the following conditions. An employee must be in continuous service, be granted 4 weeks, 20 days, and so on.
That's full-time.
Hmm?
Part-time is prorated. Part-time, they
Yeah,
don't get
but an employee's got to be in continuous service for 4 weeks.
It's not different than for part-timers that are.
Okay, that's what I'm just saying. That's, okay.
Same thing.
Right, but it says they're credited with vacation at the commencement of each fiscal year. Yeah.
So that's pretty, seems pretty clear.
Except provided that employee is employed prior to July 1. So I can see how this could be interpreted in a couple different ways, but we're not here to make a legal interpretation, so feel like pulling the trigger?
You don't earn the vacation unless, from what I'm understanding from this, you don't earn the vacation unless you've worked the full year, and you can't do a partial on it. And I think that's what the problem is here. Mr. Muse is looking for a partial, and I think, again, we all love them dearly, everybody, but it's not going to happen.
What about part-time employees, that 11.3? Part-time employees shall receive vacation leave on the same basis as full-time employees, provided, however, that such leave shall be prorated according to the number of hours or weeks, hours or days
So
of
you
work.
get 50% of 4 weeks if you're a
For a full-time
50%
week.
part-time person, yeah, so.
With regret, I move that we decline to pay Mr. Muse's vacation pay.
I second that regretfully.
Motion's been regretfully made and regretfully seconded that we decline the vacation pay, the prorated vacation pay that's been requested by Mr. Muse. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstain?
Abstain.
Jackie, did you vote?
As per the bylaws, if you hadn't worked that time, so I said aye.
Okay. 4 ayes, 1 abstention. Motion passes by majority. That's tough. It's a hard thing to do. Okay.
Pay us the big bucks.
Yeah. Moving on, then, we have down to payroll warrant. I'll just read it. The amount of $223,882.01.
Motion approved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bill warrant, $179,000, $21.46.
Motion approved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the personnel request form for custodial, we've talked about that, no further thing. One-day licenses, we have LeMay on August 26th of 2012. They're planning ahead.
Did we do the personnel request form? Did we vote that, or is that there to be signed, or? I don't want to leave Ed hanging with the, we need to, if we haven't voted that before, I'd move that we sign it now. The personnel.
The PRF for the custodial?
I don't know that we voted it before or not. We did?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just the matter of the budgeting.
It was my right idea.
That was a great idea. Okay, so now we have then a one-day license for LeMay, 8/26. It should be in signatures.
It's right, I made it easier for you.
Okay, so it is Henry and Betty LeMay, 3 Golden Circle, beer and wine, only Sunday, August 26th. What did we decide? Sunday, 12 noon was the start date. This is start time, 12 noon to 6 p.m. at Conant Park. It's an anniversary party, 150 people, $25 for beer and wine, and
All the paperwork's there.
did they send, I don't have a check here, did they send?
I have the check for turnover.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Can we not use that folder?
Yeah.
Sorry? Yeah.
Sorry, yeah,
There's a
I'd
whole
like to
harmless
get
there,
rid
should be separate. Okay.
Just out of curiosity, are those still going through the chief's office to get approved? Police chief? You know, just to have, so that he's aware that these are
I'll
coming?
send him notice because the folks have to sign out the key.
Okay.
Okay, town owner agreements, these are all in the signature folder. These are with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, and we are the past, we're the money launderers, I guess you could say. Is that right? Or we are the focal point?
With a funnel.
The funnel, excuse me, I got the word wrong.
And so this goes-
Launderers. So, any case, these are the housing rehab applicants that need to be signed, and the first one is in the amount of $27,000. It's a discharge of lien on real estate, technically. And the city of Southampton is party to an agreement and loan of up to $27,000 from the fiscal year 10 Southampton Community Assistance Program to the owner, 25 Granby Road, Granville, Massachusetts. So this is a discharge of, and this has to be notarized as well, and you want to look at it as a notary?
I can notarize whoever's signature, but I don't have my seal with me. I know, I want the date, but I don't have the, if they need the embossing.
I would think it's been paid off, yeah?
Huh? I don't think so. She gone.
So this, I'll wait for
Oh, Jess, I think this, oh, this does say discharge of lien on
Yeah.
real estate.
that. That's what I read.
But I thought it was, the way I'm reading the caption is, it sounds like we're getting a lien.
No, the liens, I got 3 discharges of liens here. So
That makes
these are
no sense.
applicants.
Makes no sense. Why are we paying them to discharge their liens?
No, we're not. We're, remember, so we have some activity that comes from the PVPC.
No, I know it, but I mean, why is that grant paying to have people's liens discharged? Makes no
I think
sense.
they put the lien on in the first place, so when they do the rehab, the applicants don't
Oh, they get
sell
their,
sell their property prior to a certain time.
oh. The city town of Southampton is party to an agreement and loan of up to 20,000 to Pamela Wood, owners, 20,000, as evidenced by an assignment of proceeds mortgage.
Yeah, what Reg is saying is correct. After they do work in town, we have a lien against them. If they sign it, then we're allowed that amount of money. But if they stay in it X amount of years or whatever, it's dissolved. How come we've got to do this, though, for Granville,
There's
Blandford?
3 different towns that we're the focal point.
We
for.
are?
Yeah,
Okay.
Blandford, Granville, Montgomery, and
We all
ourselves.
applied, we all
All right.
applied for the grant, and we're the lead town.
We
All right.
won the right to distribute all of the administrative things. So if you all authorize me, I can come down tomorrow when Eileen is here and those sign
Move to
things.
approve all of them.
Second?
Okay, there's one other thing, though. There's a town owner agreement, a new one, for fiscal year 10 housing rehab applicant that needs to be signed and expedited as soon as possible.
Move to have you sign all those.
Second?
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so I'll come down tomorrow and do those. Okay.
All right.
Can I-
We signed
Upcoming
everything.
Housing Needs Assessment Community Development, nothing at this time. We're now down to other business and announcements. Of course, we have a special town meeting at 7. However, we have from 5:30 to 6:30, we have the report on the Labrie Field.
And at 6:30.
And
we're
at
gonna
6:30, we have a meeting with Finance.
Did they ever say they were going to meet?
Finance committee, no, but I have a question about that. I know Robert Floyd last year, came in and asked that no meetings had taken place prior to town meetings? Or if they did, is there a confusion at one, go ahead, I'm sorry.
We had a huge problem with the town clerk, myself, and others who needed to set up, Robert Floyd, 15th Street, that needed to set up for the last annual town meeting. It was real close, we didn't get into maybe, I don't know, 6 minutes, 5 minutes of 7. So my suggestion was whatever information meeting you're going to have it diagonally opposite or on the other side near the entrance when we come into that room. So people need to just set up their paperwork, and the recording machinery, I gotta check the mics. So, we only have 5 minutes, that's not fair to the whole procedure. In fact, we were forced, I believe, to keep start late, which is unnecessary.
Well, I think this year you're going to have a gap of a half hour.
Right. We can meet with Finance in the hall.
Yeah, we're going to be.
And you're gonna be meeting in a hall somewhere, or?
Yeah,
gonna be-
yeah.
Yeah,
no,
sure.
we'll
We
meet.
can find a place away so we don't disrupt.
I think their meeting, Ed's meeting is 5:30 to 6:30,
Yes.
and we're going to meet at 6:30, but we'll be out of here.
Okay, good.
Right.
Okay, good deal. Then we have select board meetings, of course, February
Good.
7th and
You got finances
21st.
here
Sorry,
now.
hand was,
No, finance is here now.
right. So, Finance, you're aware of the meeting with ourselves and David Keelson, 6:30 on the 31st?
No, we haven't been informed of that.
I thought they snuck out.
Just by rumor, that's why we're down there.
Okay, so we would like to officially invite you to meet with ourselves and David Keelson at 6:30, obviously prior to the special town meeting, to review the exact amount of the free cash, which should be done tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, we understand, and any other items that might require this sort of joint meeting.
He is going to look into that. maybe discrepancy that was brought up?
He said that a couple of things. One was the amount wasn't that material, and two, that he wasn't aware of any discrepancies, but he was going to recalculate the levy limit that appears to be at the heart of this issue, this 200 and something, almost 300,000. So his understanding was that we were under the levy limit at 13.5. So he's going to verify that.
If by chance that there is that big of a discrepancy, that obviously means we have no free cash left, because the state will automatically grab it before we get it, which means that the meeting next week
Would be a non-event.
a whole different.
Right.
Okay, so is there a way to find out about that? before
We've
our
asked,
hour?
we've asked,
We've asked him to recalculate the numbers, the levy limit, and obviously, and to go through this. He doesn't believe that there are any discrepancies.
But is he gonna get back to us before a half hour before the town meeting, or is that when we're gonna find out if we have a crisis?
And we'll certainly find out before then.
Did-
Because it's gonna be, it will be a crisis motive.
well,
Wouldn't actually get grabbed by the state until fiscal year 13, I would think.
Yeah, well, that's what we're planning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the calendar, well,
But one of the issues is, and this is another issue over here, the articles. There's a lot of money in the articles.
right. I was going to ask if you guys took a vote on them.
Well, that's what, again, why we're here. The normal procedure is you folks invite us to the meeting, we jointly discuss them and decide if we're gonna support them or not, and we kind of feel like kind of left out in the process.
Oops, didn't mean to.
Well, you guys do receive the agendas, no? When they have the special town meeting warrant on there?
But the thing
Okay.
is, we normally got an invitation, us four up there with our full agenda, it's kind of tough to.
Right, and it wasn't done on purpose. You guys have your agendas. No, I'm just saying, you guys have your meetings at the same time that the select board has.
sorry about that, that's, yeah,
If you
right.
let us know, we'll just.
Sure.
Okay.
Well,
So we have 2 minutes to discuss
yeah.
them?
Can we say that we won't let that happen again? Mistake, we'll fix that mistake.
I think we should put that on the acting count.
We'll fix that the next time.
So can we discuss those? You have time to discuss those?
Yes, we
There's
do.
a few of them that we have some questions, concerns, issues.
Just checking our agenda. I
We
think
did
we're
too.
all set.
We all done?
With that, everything else is done with, so we can declare open time for the public, which includes Finance Committee. Yeah, you're on, go ahead.
I don't have the article, so Derek has it. Number, I guess the first one I seen that we discussed was the $16,000 for town employees. And you bring up that as a thought process because we gave, I believe, in last year's budget, this year's budget, 1% increase. This is 2% on top of that. And I don't think we're adverse to the town folks getting an increase. The question is, how will this affect negotiations going forward? Because all the union contracts are open end this year, correct?
Right. They're all.
Yeah, so that's why you're starting momentum there that you're not going to be able to stop. And we just wanted to make sure that was something that was brought up originally.
We had some discussion by Mike, the last time we met.
Voted to pass over.
We voted to pass over, well, and I don't know whether that was an official vote or not, but there was no official vote, I don't think. But we talked about passing over the money articles in light of Ed's storm estimate that and tonight he confirmed it, best case scenario is 50,000, worst case scenario is 150,000. So I think was that Friday morning meeting we did it? We all talked about it, or I forget when the meeting was.
Was on a Friday morning?
Friday morning meeting, we met to sign the articles, we talked, 3 selectmen talked, and I think we basically agreed that we were going to pass over we would move to pass over all the financial articles.
Tell me if I'm wrong procedurally, but you can pass it over if somebody brings it up on the floor. That's
You're guaranteed. You're guaranteed that's going to happen because there'll be a lot of town employees.
Absolutely. I mean, if I'm a betting man, I'm saying it's going to pass. Even if you pass over it, it's going to go up past. So that's money that we have to worry about when we're going forward. You folks are negotiating, so I think you have to deal with that, but.
We stepped in it.
Yeah. The other one, the second one, was the Article 2, I guess, the school's asking for $12,2500 to cover additional transportation costs. And this is similar to the request we get, and I think there's one more in here, of departments coming here saying, well, we overspent this line item, we'd like some money from the reserve. What we tell them is that you have money in the budget left over, wait until the end of the fiscal year so we can see how much money is in your total budget. A perfect example is last year when we sat down with Dave Kielsen. He sat there massaging the money like we do every year. There's some left over here, there's some left over there. And the police department had leftover money in a couple of lines, but they came to us for money from the reserve, and we said, this doesn't make sense that we're using a reserve or free cash if you've got line item money left over. In my mind, when I do my budget at work, is what's the bottom line in the budget? I mean, that line's overdrawn a little, that one's in the black, as long as you stay within your budget. So I think there's some precedent here that if we're gonna give the school $12.5 thousand because they're over in that line, without looking at their total budget for the year. And they're doing okay in that end of it. So it just, again, they're gonna bring it up on the floor and it's gonna fly out. The same thing with Article 6. The police, $9K to pay for new staff. Again, it's not all the money. But if you remember, that was voted on the floor to get a new police officer last year for 6 months, and we all said, great, but how are you going to fund it, and how are you going to pay for the additional costs going forward? The answer is right here. It's going onto the floor of the town meeting, and those never get passed over. I mean, it's the department heads do their job great. They're impassioned, and they get up there, and we really need this. And I applaud them for doing that. They're doing their job, but this is not the way to run a budget. This should come out of the police budget, and at the end of the year, if there's money that's needed, that's when we reconcile it to take money from the overflow. But we're creating artificial, deficits here by doing this.
Well, John, just to give you an example, we did ask the police chief to itemize more clearly what this 9,000 was, and we were actually told when we voted to hire the new officer that there would be some academy expenses that would appear on the subsequent fiscal year, which is coming up to see us now. So we knew about that. So that component, we certainly were forewarned in advance. So I wouldn't quite go so far as to say this is how we're funding the new police officer. This is how we're funding
it on the town meeting floor last year.
Right.
And now we're funding some of the cost of that.
Right, exactly. But we were forewarned about that cost of the
Right, but there's still money in the budgets. Why have to go to a town meeting with an article if there's still money in somebody's budget? Why not spend down the money, manage your money during the year, whatever department, not just police. And then when you get towards the end of the year, to see if you need to switch some line items around to help yourself out. Don't just, go because you're over on one line item and go get money for it. It's just not a good way to manage.
So you're saying right now the police department has...
There's money in line items, sure.
Right.
We're only 6 months through, and there's always money there. At the end of the year, they give some back, although we give them some.
So it's premature, you're saying, to ask for free cash before the budget is...
If it was completely overdrawn, it's only $9,000. It's not a big amount that takes the budget anywhere close to being over.
Right.
So we're just concerned with the way people are able to manage the money on the floor without needing. And again, they're doing a good job because that's what your job is. They're trying to keep the department going. It's just, you kind of force them to do the wrong thing. And the street sweeper is just a large chunk of money. I mean,
It can't happen now.
Can't get on anymore. And what we were hoping, when we talked about both committees a few months ago, is to take some stabilization money, or take some money from free cash, and split it between the two stabilization accounts, so we can build it up. Because now I think we have about 60,000 in there, and next time Chief Silvernail says we need a cruiser, that's more than half of it gone. You got to fund it out of there, or you can fund it on the floor, just like we're doing here. And we don't have enough money to pay for the street sweeper in the highway, so we need to put money in those accounts so that we can manage them.
When we looked at this before, too, my question was, why would you fund a capital item like a street sweeper out of cash anyway? So that to me didn't make much sense, but
Debt exclusion or something.
debt exclusion was, I was thinking it would make more sense, but I also understand that this will not fly, frankly. That this will get swept away.
After the vote.
That's true.
I'm cynical on those because if you get enough of the right people, whatever the right people or the group is, you get the hands in the air.
Did you get an explanation of why this isn't just being put to the capital improvement committee for the annual town meeting instead of putting it into this special?
It was a sort of a Hail Mary.
Well, let's hope that the town voters will understand that it should be at an annual, because that's when those kind of items come up. Because again, I agree with John, if a person gets up and makes an impassioned enough presentation and the right people show up at the meeting, this could get spent. And this is free cash just flying out the window
with this new sort of issue that is still somewhat unresolved in terms of, are we out of whack from last annual town meeting or not? I mean, that seems a little bit hard to believe, but still, the fact that it's an issue and unresolved means spending free cash on anything doesn't sound like a good idea.
No, as impassioned as they're going to be, I think we're going to have to stand somewhat united and say, this is not the time. That free cash should get held until we know what the result of the October storm is, and then I agree with John, it should simply get divided in half into each stabilization account and over and done with, and start building up our reserves again.
Take it out of there, we need to, but my concern, our concern is that, if that thing with the assessor, if any of it is true, and if Ed Colley needs $150,000, and you pass this $60,000, all of a sudden you don't have enough free cash to cover it, and what do? You go back to the department saying, you cut, because there's nowhere else to go after that.
It'll be a massacre.
We can't run in the red, and the red will be the people, because there's nowhere else to go. And once the town meeting votes it, I don't know if we can go back and unvote something.
You can rescind a town meeting vote. They did that with another thing
Like
several
going
years
to
ago.
another town meeting?
Yep.
Yeah.
Take money out of the budget.
But you can see where we're teetering, and we hope this thing that, was brought up isn't accurate, but what if it is?
Well, and I think right now we have to assume it might be, and we have to plan. We have to plan as if it is the worst case scenario, and then protect ourselves from it.
Yeah. And then the other part is just managing budgets properly. Department heads need to manage.
I looked at the public safety, and they're half spent for the year. I'm not looking.
They should be though.
Right, and I'm not looking at the police line alone, but the total budget for protection of people and property is $1.1 million, and they've spent less than $600,000.
So $9,000 should be hard to come up with in this particular instance.
Special.
Or for the school.
Well, in the school is the same thing. When I think we talked about that when we were here, they're asking for one line item. We don't know whether they're over or under on the rest of their accounts, and that gives them, if we give them the extra 12.5 or whatever the number is, it gives them the freedom to wheel and deal through their accounts without trying to protect themselves from that money.
They have this school of choice fund, and the scenario behind it is we want to save that and build it up, because if school choice flips around, we have to pay it. But at last I knew how much was in there, it was a big.
It's a big number.
Big chunk of money. 12.5 out of that is not, so I don't think we're asking the people to manage the budgets properly.
I think it was our consensus that we were going to move to pass over all the financial articles. But again, it depends on who shows up.
It'll be a challenge.
They should have never been put on the warrant.
So that's where we are.
Okay. Derek, you haven't said, or how do you feel about all this? What's your thoughts?
We've discussed it, John, just kind of bringing the consensus of the financial board.
But
you guys, once it's on there.
But will you guys take a vote to not support those? And I mean, that's a key thing that we need to go have that night if it's going to.
I think, like you said, without knowing what our liability is at this point, you can't support spending money that we don't even know we have.
Right, but I mean, I think it's important to know that you guys usually have a handout on those meetings to say we don't support this.
We think we're just being verbal. It's always better, I think, to get up there and say something.
Okay, well, again, we apologize for not bringing you guys in earlier in this process. And you know the process is that we get these articles posted by department heads, of course, and that's the way things work.
Can we bring up one or two more things?
Yeah.
And just in case you get asked about it, we're holding up a PCF for
Berkeley McChesney.
highway labor / custodian.
Right.
We're holding it up because it says half custodian wage and half custodial expense have to be found. So there's no budget for half of this position, so we don't want to approve something that doesn't have a budget for it until they find the money, unless you folks have some other.
Well, when that position, when Joe Muse's position was funded last year, they knew they was going to retire, so they only funded half of it, and we thought we might be going out to contract services for the other half, so they put the other half of his wage line into expense, and it's still there. So
no wage line to cover the half.
no, there's not. It's in expense because we thought we were going to. I know. So we actually made a motion tonight to go to you for a transfer to cover some of the wages for the rest of the year, and then at the end of the year take that money. from you guys?
Reserve?
Reserve.
The salaries?
We gotta do something for custodial, because Ed's been funding it since December, and he's got no more money to fund it. But they only put half of it in the budget.
I don't think they can.
No, I meant combine it with Article 1, but if we pass over Article 1,
Yeah.
we can't.
You
switch
can't,
it.
no. I mean, that's the problem. It was handled incorrectly by putting half the wages into
Can
expense.
Dave Gilson switch something out? Is there a way to do a?
At the end of the year we can, but we can't now.
How about allowing them to run it over on that line? As long as there's enough money in the total budget.
It's out of highway, we could do it through that.
Right, but I mean, we did make a motion to ask you for a transfer because we were wrong.
I personally don't think it's a great place to take from the reserve fund. You choose to chime in, but.
I don't know about salaries,
Yeah.
but if reserve funds salaries, that'd be interesting to look at that.
We asked for $5,000.
We have like 34,000?
Yeah, you don't have enough money to do it.
And there's the other side of the coin is some of the money would,
From expenses, right?
Is that right?
some of that money is in library too, because we're gonna combine that position. So the library has but they don't carry theirs as a separate number, they just carry it as a library wages account. They don't break out the custodial, not that it's a lot of money, but we would be combining that position, that whatever money is in that account eventually either go back into free cash or whatever it is. Because they shouldn't be spending it.
I don't think you are, yeah. Are you gonna put that in there so we can?
Yes.
We gotta find out if the wages, first of all, can be paid.
Yeah.
We talked about that. So
If
we
not,
wanna let you know.
if not, when we get to the end of the year, there's an expense line that's not getting spent for anything.
Yeah, then Dave can do it. Was there anything else I missed?
No, we just want to hand in those other two. that we did, but we did.
Okay, thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, okay.
Well, we did, there's one other thing. We talked about, it would be nice if we had a permanent person in place for that position, rather than every time we sign this 12 weeks, 12 weeks, 12 weeks. So we didn't know what was going on with that position. I don't know if that's something I should be bringing up, or you can give us some thoughts?
Well, it sounds like a cloud I'm throwing out, but we are working on this. Actually, Reggie and I had a meeting today about this, today or yesterday? Yesterday? Okay, so my age, the days go by. We talked about it yesterday, and I expect within the next couple of months we'll be bringing that forward. We're in the middle of budget season right now, obviously, so there's a whole lot going on.
And she's been very helpful with us. So
Right.
I'll bring that up.
Yeah, so I appreciate that too. So yes, we are certainly working on it, and have been meeting with Reggie about it, and, yeah.
Thank you for saying that. There was that little bit of smoke in there.
What was his hand motions?
But the answer I got to working on it, and I think that's great, thanks.
The Gazette tried to get after us too a couple of weeks ago.
We couldn't write the article on that, but you all said.
There wasn't too much smoke, was there?
It's justified smoke.
Yeah, when you think about it, you can't just go.
Yeah, I know, I understand exactly.
Okay, I appreciate it. Okay, so then, anything else from finance? We really appreciate your input.
No, thank you.
It sounds like we are aligned in committee, so to speak, and ready to go to the floor with these things. So we have one other thing, which is personnel change form. And the name is Berkeley McChesney, and this will be a change in position. She was made acting director of Edwards Library until new director was hired. The new director began January 13th. So this would be changed back to Children's Services.
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this was, I should have said, this was requested by department head and signed, recommended by the P-Cube-B, and also recommended by Finance Committee. So, all right, here we go. Anything else?
I'm going to put all that contract in.
It was in my car.
We have the building use policy homework, and for those of you who have the evaluations, if you can give those to me, please. I will.
Can I put them under your
Jackie,
door?
you have that? Thank you. Got that, and Mike's gonna bring his to the meeting, to the town meeting. Anything else? Yeah, I need to come down tomorrow to sign those things in Eileen's presence. So I'll put it down. That was yesterday, wasn't it? Okay,
Move.
it's up to you, I can't.
I move.
Second.